The movie is Primate, which was written by Ernest, Riera, and Johannes and directed by Johannes. This horror film follows Lucy, a young woman who, after a long time away, travels back home to Hawaii to visit her dad and her little sister. But her homecoming soon turns deadly when her family's very clever chimpanzee Ben becomes infected with rabies. With her father away at a book signing and no help coming, paradise becomes a prison as Lucy and her friends fight for survival against a pet that was once part of the family. I think this film was largely what I expected it to be. It's a pretty simplistic horror film. It gets you in, it delivers some scares, and it gets you out in less than 90 minutes. But I think what I didn't expect, and what actually made this film a little bit better than I had anticipated, were the incredible prosthetics and practical effects, the score that was like weirdly good, and the excessive gore that at times had my jaw on the floor. Most creature features would probably almost exclusively use CGI to depict a monstrous animal, with maybe some very limited practical effects. This film does the opposite of that, where by and large, when you see the chimpanzee on the screen, it's just a guy in an amazingly detailed and realistic practical suit. Yes, there was some CGI used to accent the practical suit, but again, it was mostly actor Miguel Hernando Torres Umba in a costume, doing an outstanding job of depicting this unsettling and horrifying rabid chimpanzee. That alone, I think, dramatically improved the quality of this movie. And no, it's probably not going to get added to the Criterion Collection because of it. But it's decisions like that that make for an overwhelmingly more interesting film. For instance, the performances from the cast weren't Oscar-worthy, but their fear felt largely real, and I can guarantee you a big part of that is because they were acting with what feels like a real chimp, instead of across from some dude in a onesie covered in white dots. Similarly, while of course there was a good bit of CGI used to depict the absurdly gory scenes in the film, practical effects were also heavily used there too, further adding to the realism of the movie, making the visuals dramatically more disturbing. Something else that really struck me was the score of the film. It really just had no business being as good as it was. Composer Adrian Johnston could have easily just phoned it in and added a bunch of eerie tones and chaotic violins, but instead, he gave the score a ton of beautiful layered synths that really harkened back to horror movies from the 70s and 80s. Parts of it definitely reminded me of the main theme from the original Halloween film, which I have to think partially served as an inspiration for him. And overall, the score just really shaped the film in a tremendous way. One of the most unexpected aspects of the film was just how gory it was. I think it's kind of rare that I feel shocked by intense gore in films, but there were a couple of scenes specifically in this movie that actually really got to me. They really didn't pull punches in that regard, which I also think made the whole experience more visceral than it otherwise would have been if they'd have tried to nerf the violence in order to make the film PG-13. I will say, sort of a side note, I don't love movies like this where they take an animal that is largely innocent and they make it the antagonist. They make people kind of fear this thing, add more animosity towards this real life animal. I get it. It's a movie. They can get rabies. That's very real. However, it just sometimes kind of rubs me the wrong way. Maybe that's a little bit too much of a conservationist or an animal lover take, but I did feel like it was important to include in the video. I thought that the film managed to subvert expectations a few times, which I really did appreciate. But at the same time, they did very much follow the standard horror film formula. Now, I will say the plot of the film is very basic and at times a little bit dumb. Most of the characters are barely even one-dimensional, and the first act before the chaos begins is really kind of a slog. But to be honest, that's all fine to me, because that's kind of exactly what this movie should be. If you're going into a film like this, expecting to come away with some new profound perspective on life or the human experience, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. No, this certainly isn't a phenomenal masterpiece, but I do think it's a fun slasher popcorn movie that will make you want to look away because of the hyper-realistic Mortal Kombat fatality-esque gore, and it ultimately delivers more than what it promises by providing you with a thoughtless escape from the day-to-day while showcasing some awesome practical effects and a killer score. I personally always like watching gruesome horror films like this in the theater for that shared communal experience, so I'd recommend seeing this one at the movies while you still can. So go watch Primate. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, support me that way, or like the video, that also really helps. And leave a comment letting me know what you thought of this movie or what movie you think I should review next. I put out a movie review each week, so subscribe to stay tuned. Thanks, y'all.